From script to screen, every film is brought to life by visionary creatives and executives, all sharing one mission: to captivate the audience. Hosted by award-winning movie strategist Kevin Goetz, our podcast, Don't Kill the Messenger, offers a filmmaking masterclass through intimate conversations with Hollywood's most influential voices. And now, your host, Kevin Goetz.
Picture a young boy running around TV sets in New York, the son of a legendary director and a pioneering producer. By high school, he's acting in theater. By film school, he's directing award-winning shorts. And not long after, he's launching Julia Roberts in Mystic Pizza and reshaping the rom-com playbook with Miss Congeniality and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That boy, of course, is Donald Petrie, who has a deep understanding of character, chemistry, and the audience. Donald, you're a former actor-turned-director. You've worked with performers, navigated audience feedback. You've continued a family legacy steeped in storytelling, and I want to add integrity. I am so thrilled to have you, who I consider, I don't know if it's a first cousin or a brother, but certainly my family. And I'm grateful to have you here, and I've wanted you on this show for so long. Welcome.
It's great to be here. And yes, I think it's definitely family. I would be honored to call you my brother.
Well, that's so sweet of you. I want to say, Donald, let's put it in context of why I would be considered family. So years and years ago, I didn't even know you. I tested a movie for your dad, the late Daniel Petrie Sr. Dan was legendary in movies, but especially television. He made so many important movies. And then your mother, Dorothea, kind of broke the glass ceiling when it came to women producing and also won a ton of Emmys. My husband Neil and I once joked that when we went over a dinner party at your parents' house, it was a dinner for 12, and I think there were enough Emmys for every place setting. And so, cut to, years later, I produced a movie called Wild Iris, and I was lucky enough to pique your dad's interest and get him involved as the director. It was an extraordinary experience. It starred the late Jenna Rollins, Laura Linney, and Emile Hirsch, and it ended up getting nominated for 3 Emmys, and it won Laura Linney a Best Actress Emmy. And from that point, your dad and I were joined at the hip. And I feel like after Dad died, I started really seeing your mother on a regular basis. It's sort of a promise I made him to stay involved. And then, of course, I worked on every one of your movies and your brother Dan's movies. And I love June and Mary and all the family and kids. I had to get that out of the way, listeners. Sorry.
All I can say is you are part of the family. And certainly when it comes to the movies, you're the first one we go to when we need a second opinion, a constructive opinion. I think that's the key. That's really the key. Because opinions, what do they say about opinions? They're
like assholes. Everyone has one.
But a constructive opinion is a whole different level. And you are insightful and you are an expert in your field.
Oh, thanks,
and you go way beyond the normal of audience testing. Audience testing, of course, being mainly for the marketing people. They want to know who and how to market the film. But from a filmmaker's perspective, especially someone like myself who works mainly in comedy, dying is easy, comedy is hard. And listen, your insights into, what's working and what's not working and even how to make it better are invaluable.
Donald, let me start with the young Donald. There is an innate decency and sense of humanity to you, of your persona, your whole family's persona. What did your parents instill early on? I mean, they were both in the business, but they seemed enormously present in the kids' lives. You weren't raised by nannies.
No, we weren't raised by nannies. In fact, wherever my father was doing a movie, the family moved. So I went to 5 elementary schools, 3 high schools, because we were in New York, London, New York, LA, New York, wherever Dad was doing a movie. My older brother, Dan Jr., he kind of got sick of that and went off to boarding school, I think, from junior high on. So I only saw him at certain times of the year. But June and Mary and I, went to London and wherever.
But why do everybody in the business, everybody that I know, you mention the Petrie name and they say kind, decent, the greatest of integrity. Where did that come from? Is it from the Nova Scotia roots of Dad? Is it from your mother? Because it's not like by accident.
I wish I knew. I wish I really knew the answer to that. I had great, loving parents who were parents. Show business came about for us almost through osmosis. It was never pushed.
Tell us about that.
To tell you the truth, as a kid, I didn't know what my dad did. Growing up, yes, I visited the set in New York once back in live television, one of these early shows. I was young, like 5 or something like this.
Well, then live television went the way of the dodo bird.
I know. I remember visiting the set and leaning against a wall, and the wall moved. And it was the first time I realized this world isn't real. But my father has always instilled in us respect for talent. I think if I had one lesson that I really learned from both parents, this is a collaborative art. And my dad used to call it making it director proof. Surround yourself with the best people you can, the most wonderful actors, producers, writers, cinematographers, composers, editors, assistant directors, hugely important, production design, casting. Well, of course, they say in Hollywood, casting. And I've been privileged, honored to work with some of the best actors in the business and some of the best producers, writers, cinematographers, and on.
So you started as an actor. You went to school to be an actor.
Right.
What did you learn as an actor that would inform your filmmaking career?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm kind of known as an actor's director. And I think part of what I learned both at Santa Monica College and Cal State Northridge, and what Dad instilled in me too, was it's not so much what you learn, it's that you learn how to learn and how to continue learning long past school. So once I graduated, I said, well, then I want to study with Lee Strasberg. Well, I want to study with Stella Adler. Well, I want to study with Uta Hagen. Well, I want to study with Harry Mastergeorge, and studied with all of them. So being able to compare all those different kind of schools of acting helped me enormously when it came to directing. A part of what you need to know when you're working with actors is how they tick, how they work, whose method, who's more the English school. How can you best help the actor get to their best performance by knowing what their background is and what makes them tick?
How did you cast Julia Roberts in Mystic Pizza? Because she, obviously, we know how that turned out.
Yes, I was 3 weeks from shooting, and I had cast pretty much the rest of the movie. And that was the most difficult role to cast because she had to be brazen, bravado, and yet the most vulnerable of the 3.
Wow. I get it, man.
You could pull off one or the other, but getting that combination of sexy, bravado, and yet she's the one who's scared. She's the one who doesn't see a future for herself. And when Julia came in and read, and I've heard the stories where she colored her hair for it and all this kind of thing. I had no clue of that. All I know is I was standing next to the camera when she read, and I breathed this sigh of relief. I think I just went, ah. I found our Daisy. And I'll tell you, even then, I called the director of the movie that she had done before.
Oh, she had done a movie.
Satisfaction.
I didn't know she had done a movie before.
She had done one movie in a much smaller role. It was a movie called Satisfaction.
Got it.
And I called the director just to say, hey, what do you know? Can I see some footage? And she said to me, well, because I was actually interested in a different actress. And she said, well, you could be, but if you see this footage, you'll cast Julia Roberts.
Wow.
And then later on, after Mystic Pizza was in the can, but not released yet, I get a call from Herbert Ross, who is directing a movie called Steel Magnolias. And he's interested in a different actor in the movie that I was doing. And I said the same thing that the director of Satisfaction said to me. I said, Herbert, I'll show you whatever footage you want, but you'll cast Julia Roberts.
Oh, and she got an Oscar nomination for that.
Oh, yeah.
I would be remiss if I did not mention my very dear friend Adam Stork.
Of course.
Who played Julia Roberts' boyfriend in that.
Yes, absolutely.
Was he great to work with?
Oh, he was fantastic.
Leading question.
Fantastic. I'll tell you, after that movie, I was really wondering where Julia Roberts' career would go, because so much has to do with being selective about your choices. And she did the best job of finding the right projects, or she had the best luck of those projects coming to her to make such a wonderful career.
Your dad did that with Emile Hirsch on Wild Iris. It was only Emile's second. It's the same story, but it's the same thing. And I remember meeting Emile, and he was 14 at the time, I think, going on 15. And your dad saw something very special in him. I came on board, in all candor, a little after that. It took me a second to get on board because I always saw the character in my head as a blonde. And
I was available.
Yeah. So, and your dad said, no, we're going with him. And I said, okay, I defer. Mm-hmm. And he never was dictatorial at all. I don't want to come off. He looked a little like John Ford in his later years, but he had the complete opposite demeanor. He was such a gentleman. In any event, so Emile was so particular about the roles that he would take. I was like, you got to get a publicist and get in the teen magazines. And the complete wrong advice for someone like that. And I envied that because I never had that. I was just like, give me a role, you know what I mean? And of course, I ended up moving careers.
As did I.
I do want to talk about how Mystic Pizza helped launch the trajectory of your career, if you will.
Well, it's funny. I'll go back a little further than that, in that I started in television, and it was television and getting to work with the great Stephen Bochco and directing an episode of L.A. Law called The Venus Butterfly.
Oh, that's a famous episode. No shit.
Very famous episode. Got me an Emmy nomination. And
how old were you?
I don't know. Maybe 26.
We would have been able to add a 13th to the table.
I wish. Anyway, that changed the trajectory of my career because, frankly, then was when I started getting offers of feature films. I knew from my father also, who was very wise, that directors get typecast just as fast or faster than actors do. Most first-time directors get offered low-budget horror slasher movies, and I was not a fan of those. And so, indeed, when Mystic Pizza came along, it came from the producers 2 scripts. They really wanted me for this sci-fi monster movie.
Oh.
But they said, but we've also got this other little picture we're doing, Mystic Pizza. And I read the sci-fi horror picture, and I went, not for me. And I read Mystic Pizza and fell in love. So I called the producers the next day, and I said, I didn't tell them which. I just said, I love this script. And they said, oh, come in. And they thought I was talking about the monster picture.
Oh, man.
I went in and talked to them, and I could see their faces as I'm describing how passionate about this I am. And then, of course, then they realized, oh, you want Mystic Pizza. I went, yeah, it's great. And he went, oh.
The other vein running through your family's blood that is a universal theme is taste. You all have great taste, and it's a gift, It's just in the blood. Your mother came up with CBB, and then your dad took it over, and then I saw his script, and I said, what's that? And he said, I got it from Dorothea. CBB was could be better. I use it to this day on editorial stuff in everything I do. Those three initials, to me, embody the craftsmanship, the artistry of both mom and dad. By the way, when your dad and I would have our weekly lunches after Wild Iris, because we remained great friends and he considered him like a dad or a grandpa, I joked with him because the book Tuesdays with Maury came out recently. I said, hey, Dan, this is like Tuesdays with Maury. He goes, don't say that. He didn't like that. We used to go to Cafe Roma.
Yeah.
Right? Where Schwarzenegger would have his cigars and, and everyone knew Dan. And that was great. And then Mom and I found our own restaurants afterwards.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm so sorry to hijack the conversation with Mom and Dad. It must give you great pleasure, right?
Oh, absolutely. Great memories.
So I want to go back a moment to the launching of your film career, because I didn't even know that you started in television. I thought you had done a short which led to Mystic Pizza. I didn't realize it was an Emmy nomination that you got from the Bochco series. That's incredible.
Right.
Then you get Mystic Pizza, but then you don't want to get typecast, but you have a knack for comedy. I mean, I can vouch that you're one of the best, truly. And I see the way your mind works. I see how you think funny. Tell us about that.
That's sometimes an issue, because I'll be reading a wonderful dramatic script and, they're at the mother's funeral. Even in the most tragic of moments in a screenplay, I go, but wouldn't it be funny if something happened with the coffin?
No, in every area of your life, Donald. So, for example, Donald had a business card that he used to hand out. Folks, do you remember business cards? I was just on Capitol Hill last week speaking to Congress about piracy, and everyone has business cards. And they're like, can I have yours? I'm like, I don't have a business card. I haven't had one in years. Anyway, Donald, what did your business card say?
It said Donald M. Petrie since 1954.
I thought it was one of the most clever taglines.
Okay, I stole it. I stole that idea. Ed Begley Jr. did it before I did.
Oh, shoot. I thought you were going to say Heinz ketchup or something, So again, going back to Mystic Pizza comes out, it gets rave reviews. It's a moderate success.
I wish it got rave reviews. It got mixed reviews.
No
but
shit.
It really caught on with the audiences. I was honored because it was on Turner Classic Movies last week. I felt if any one of my movies would have gone to Turner Classic Movies first, it would have been Grumpy Old Men.
Oh, yeah, that little movie. Okay, I'm going to just move ahead then because you mentioned it and I was leading up to it. Grumpy Old Men. You got to work with two comic legends, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. What was it like the day before shooting? Were you nervous as hell?
I was a little nervous. It was a little more about technical because I went out to where we were supposed to shoot the next day, and I noticed we hadn't had snow in a while. We brought in all this snow to cover the street where they lived in Minnesota, and we brought in clean snow from the airport because they need to keep the runways clean. Anyway, we put cotton bunting like they do in Hollywood on the roofs of the houses, and the color didn't match. So anyway, that night it snowed a quarter of an inch and everything was perfect.
I've got chills. I've got chills. That's divine intervention.
And then the first day of shooting, or maybe it was the second day, where Walter came up to me and he said, Donald, after take 3, I don't get any better. I just get older. But then Walter said, and I really only need 2 directions, LD or MD. I said, yes, Walter. He says, more demented, less demented. If I ever write a book, that's the title of the book. But that's how I pretty much directed Walter Matthau for the rest of the movie.
Did Jack and Walter get along?
Oh my God, they were fast friends. They had each in their contract a specific hotel room that would have a kitchen and all that. And we found one that just happened to connect.
What was it like directing Jack Lemmon?
Jack Lemmon is meticulous. I mean, everybody knows about Magic Time. And Jack would ask the AD, please call me to the set about 20 minutes before you're ready to shoot. And you'd see him going through the scene himself. And most of the time, say, an eating scene would be a continuity nightmare. Did he have the fork in his hand? Was the fork up? Was the fork down? Was there food on the fork? Was it right? With Jack, it would be exactly the same because he used everything. If he's going to hold a fork, he's going to use that fork as a prop, as to better tell the story.
An editor's dream.
So it really was an editor's dream. But also, in some ways, I found that Jack and Walter were better together than apart because Walter was never the same twice. And Jack was so specific that Walter yanked Jack out of whatever he had planned, and Jack grounded Walter.
Oh, it's like a good marriage. Did you let them play?
Oh, my God. It's an outtake ending. And the very first test screening of that, the only outtake at the end, there was a line in the movie that I thought was inappropriate. Burgess Meredith and Jack are looking out the window, seeing that Ossie Davis is going to go in and have the Thanksgiving date with Anne Margaret. And they're jealous as hell, or Jack is, right? What Burgess Meredith's line was looks like Jake's going to bury his boner, or, whatever, right? All these, looks like he's going to ride the wild baloney pony. And the line in the script I thought was kind of too filthy.
What was it?
Looks like Jack's going to take the skin boat to Tuna Town. That was what was in the script.
Oh, seriously, that is the funniest line ever.
I asked the Teamsters to come up with alternate lines, right? And we had about 20. And rather than guess, I shot them all. And with Burgess, since he couldn't remember the line anyway, everything was cue cards. So we just flipped the card. And I told Jack that I was going to do this over and over and over. So we had about 12 different versions of that line. And that's what we showed at that first test screening.
I was there with
those, you. And on the sheet that they fill out were all the lines listed, and check which one you liked.
Stop it. I have to tell you, that is so genius an idea. And that's part of your brilliance. And to have Burgess Meredith in that voice say those lines, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Just finishing Grumpy Old Men, what else do you remember from that movie that was particularly special?
Well, first of all, it had so much heart. It makes you laugh. It makes you cry. I did learn a lesson from that movie. The original script, which, mind you, Mark Steven Johnson wrote, and he was a receptionist at like Orion or someplace, and handed the script to John Davis. I thought that script was perfect. I wouldn't have changed one word in it.
Wow.
And I shot it that way, which was a bookend. At the opening, you're outside a church, and you think you're there for a funeral. And there's Kevin Pollak and Daryl Hannah, and they start to talk about their fathers. And then the whole movie is a flashback as you meet the fathers, and they run after Anne Margaret and act like children, and right. And then at the end, you're back at the church. And the trick was Jack Lemmon, in the meanwhile, has had a heart attack in the movie. And you're supposed to wonder, Oh, are we there for Jack Lemmon's funeral? And then, of course, you go in and it's the wedding of Jack Lemmon and Anne Margaret. Well, what it taught me was when I did that opening, I guess the audience believed too strongly that it was a drama. I'm opening at a funeral. Everyone's somber. Then when it was a flashback and you had morning dickhead, morning moron, not a single laugh. It took me a half an hour to get a laugh out of the audience.
And that recovery time, right?
We lifted that whole opening off. What I did was I have to let the audience know it's okay to laugh from moment one. And this hadn't done that. Luckily, I had shots of Minnesota wintertime, Wabasha, just frozen, everything. And the credits played over those shots. And I put on the song, "We're having a heat wave, a tropical heat wave."
Oh, my
right?
Lord.
Which came actually from Walter, because Walter in the first scene comes out singing that when he goes to the mailbox. So I put in that, and as soon as they spoke, there were laughs.
You put a stake in the ground and said, we are a comedy. You're a genius. When we come back after break, we're going to talk more to Donald about his really illustrious film career and more things. We'll be back in a moment.
If you're curious about how movies actually turn a profit, I've got something for you. My upcoming book, How to Score in Hollywood, dives into the intersection of creative instinct and audience insight, and where the business of film meets the art of storytelling. I'm putting together a book launch team, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. You'll get early access to the book, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and a chance to leave a review and help spread the word ahead of our November release. Sign up to join my launch team or for book updates at KevinGoetz.360.com. And as always, thank you for your support.
We're back with my wonderful friend, Donald Petrie. Donald, I'm so in awe of all you've accomplished and all the great people you've had the good fortune to work with. It's extraordinary.
We really have to remember that this is a collaborative art.
Absolutely. I always say that.
There are those out there who are auteurs and do everything.
God bless them.
Still, I've had the great fortune of working with, again, the Lemmon, Matthau, and Burgess and those people, but Sandra Bullock, Michael Caine, Benjamin Bratt, Candice Bergen, William Shatner, Kate Hudson, Matthew McConaughey, Bebe Neuwirth, Robert Klein, Brad Pitt, Gene Hackman, Marcia Gay Harden, Jeff Daniels, Richard Dreyfuss, Nia Vardalos, Eli Wallach, June Squibb, Bill Pullman, Ed Herman. Right now I'm editing a movie with Daisy Ridley and Alden Ehrenreich.
What about some of your below-the-line folks?
Below the line and above the line. I mean, think about the producers: John Davis, Sam Goldwyn Jr., Linda Obst, Lauren Schuler Donner, Sandy Bullock.
Fabulous producer.
Sandy Bullock is a producer as well, and she's not a producer in name like some actors are.
That is correct.
She's a real deal producer.
And I've worked very closely with her on several productions where she was serving in that role and takes it very seriously.
Very much so. Sandy Panich, Mark Gordon, Chris Meledandre, Dick Wolf, Peter Jankowski.
I was thinking about your composers.
Composers: Alan Silvestri, David Newman, Tommy Newman. Now, I had an in with them. The Newmans and I went to high school together and did musicals in high school. But John Debney, who I also knew growing up. Listen, production design, David Chapman did 8 movies for me, I think.
And your editor, your fabulous editor. Well, you have a few, but one in particular.
I have a few fabulous editors. Deborah Neal Fisher.
Deb Fisher is, come on, she's...
I know. I can't afford her anymore, damn it. Patrick Don Vito, Bonnie Kohler, Billy Weber, Malcolm Campbell. I've worked with cinematographers, Russell Carpenter, Tim Surstead, Johnny Jensen, John Bailey, Laszlo Kovacs, Jose Luis Alcaine. I mean, I've been so fortunate.
My jaw is dropping, and I'm sure the listeners out there are feeling the same way. I want to play a very fast little game with you because you and I could spend 6 hours doing this, and you know I'm not even exaggerating because it's so free-flowing. I haven't gotten to one of my questions on this sheet that I have in front of me. I don't care about questions, like I don't care about a moderator's guide when I'm moderating a movie because I want the audience to guide me, and I want to use the instincts and the intuition. So I'm going to name some movies, and I want you to tell me a line of the most memorable thing about that particular film. We'll start with Opportunity Knocks.
Fear of failure.
Ooh, explain.
Well, my first movie went extremely well, and one wonders, is it always going to be that great?
Oh, this was your sophomore effort?
Yeah. Opportunity Knocks was my second film.
That's the kiss of death for many, many people. Exactly.
It's very scary, and yet, I'm working with Imagine. I have a really terrific cast, but the thing I remember most is really trying to stay on top of my best game.
The Favor.
Lauren Schuler Donner, wonderful, amazing producer. An unknown named Brad Pitt was in that.
Had he done Thelma and Louise yet?
He had shot it, but it had not been released.
Wow.
He screen tested for that.
What did you see in him when he came in?
Oddly enough, kind of the same thing as Julia Roberts. You can't take your eyes off of him, but also you could have a line in a script and 10 actors reading that line would all read it pretty much the same way. And those two, Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, people like that, it would be different. There's a uniqueness about them. There's an unpredictability about them that really makes them, like you said, you can't take your eyes off of them.
And that's also the beauty of stardom, which is that thing that we can't kind of put our finger on, which is the relationship with the camera. And sometimes you meet them in person, you go, that person?
Yeah, right.
And you're like, what? And they just, Gary Cooper apparently was that way.
Right. And that, mind you, Elizabeth McGovern was in that opposite him.
Him being Brad.
Yeah, Brad Pitt. And Elizabeth McGovern and he had a love scene in that movie. And the joke of the movie is you got Bill Pullman and Harley Jane Kozak, who are the married couple, who are, I'm too tired to have sex tonight. Can we do it without kissing? Can we do it without moving? And then you cut to Elizabeth McGovern with the hot, younger guy, Brad Pitt, making love. And it's steamy and hot, right? That was the joke in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, I shot a love scene. I couldn't air it. It was X-rated. Those guys were so into this passionate lovemaking that I think on take 7, I said, hey, guys, let's do one where we skip the orgasm. And at the end, what ended up in the movie is, she rolls onto his chest and they've,
Again, this is the genius of Donald Petrie. Once again, Richie Rich.
So much about that. John Davis again producing, shooting at Biltmore Mansion. I'll tell you, the most difficult thing about Richie Rich was here is a comic book character that is the richest kid in the world. Yet you want him to be likable, right? And I think Beauty and the Beast or some Disney animated movie had come out. And I went, well, here she's going to the Beast's house and the library is 20 stories high. And I said, a cartoon can make it as huge as anything. So I can't make a bigger plane. I can't make it, we shot at the Biltmore Mansion, which is the biggest house. But it was really about making these people lovable and eclectic. instead of flying the most latest beautiful jet, they fly an old DC-3 prop plane. They drive an old vintage Packard.
Right, because you can't top.
An animated movie.
Right.
So I had to find a different way that they show their wealth. And it ended up in the script when John Larroquette, as our bad guy, finally breaks into the vault. What's there? Family keepsakes. To him, it's junk. Where's the gold? Where's the money? Oh, we keep it in a bank.
So what you most remember from that movie is kind of this tightrope of how do I make these very wealthy people lovable?
Yeah.
Who have everything.
Yes.
Yeah, got it. Hey, let me move on to Miss Congeniality.
Well, I will tell you, working with Mark Lawrence, when I came on to that movie, I was a replacement director. I don't know who the original was, and I don't know how any falling out happened. All I know is I got a call to go in and meet on this script. But I had a lot of ideas for where I felt the script should go. The script originally was a comedy about pageants, and it kind of spoofed pageants. And I went in there, and I'm meeting with Sandy and Mark Lawrence, the writer, and the Castle Rock people. And I said, listen, right off the bat, you don't make a comedy about pageants. You treat a pageant real, and it will spoof itself. Whereas the movie I want to make is Lethal Weapon. And Sandy, you're Mel Gibson. This tough as nails, a little bit crazy, shoot first, ask questions later. That's the character I need, somebody who has subjugated every female bone in her body to do this man's job in a man's world, who then has to go undercover in the pageant. And that was the way we shaped it. And we were writing it as we were going.
What an incredible directive to give to your star. I mean, that is so specific and so actionable. Like you can really turn that into something. You know what I mean?
That was me pitching to direct it. And, a week later, because they were meeting like 4 or 5 other directors.
Well, who wouldn't give you the job after that?
So a week later, I got the job and was on a plane the next day to Texas. But a lot of Sandy is like I had dinner with Sandy and I must have said something funny or she laughed at something and did the snort. She laughed and I went, oh, keep that. And that became a thing for that character, how she walked. I said, walk like you've got balls, So again, she did walk like a brontosaurus.
I remember that movie tested really well.
Yes, it did.
Out of the gate. Was there anything you learned from the test screening process in that particular picture?
Yeah, we reshot the ending.
Tell us about it.
Well, we reshot the ending, the original ending, after they've arrested Candice Bergen and are putting her in the police car. Up came Michael Caine as Vic. And he says, oh, Kathy, how could you have done this, right? And she says, oh, you didn't talk to me like that when we were sleeping together. And both Benjamin and Sandy look at Mr. Vic and go, Mr. Vic, all right. Kind of the feeling like, whoa, you've been playing us all along. We always thought you were gay and you're really not. And the gay audience hated it. They said, we finally have an unapologetically gay man in a movie played by Michael Caine. And then you realize they only really like him after it's revealed he's not gay. And so we took that out and reshot the ending so that it's not Michael Caine coming up at all. It's Sandy putting Candice Bergen in the car, and it's a scene between Sandy and Candice Bergen is how it ended up. And it was 10 times better.
Because the focus was not on the ancillary character was on your two main characters, which is why the audience liked that, I think, also much more. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Again, casting. It was fascinating working with Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey. I think the thing I recall most is that screenplay-wise, one looks, especially in a romantic comedy, is when does the story begin? And obviously, this is a story of the competition between these two characters, Matthew and Kate. So that's when the story begins. But we're setting up two lead characters. Usually you set up one. You set up the girl who's going to meet the guy eventually, but he's just the guy. Or you meet the guy and you're eventually going to meet the girl in the piece. But you have one lead character. This had two. It had two people with equal backgrounds and equal agendas going on to try to fool the other one. And so I never want to go past, say, 20 minutes into the movie before my two lead characters are going to meet. And the tango of these two people working each other can begin. So that, I think, was the most difficult thing.
You are a big advocate of the audience test screening process. You've always been, and I've always respected that about you and appreciated that. What do you find most useful about the test screening process, and what would you tell a young filmmaker who is just getting into shooting and now testing their movie?
Well, I talk to young filmmakers all the time because I have given master classes at Chapman and at USC and Cal State Northridge. So I work with students a lot. We don't know everything. As a director, yes, I am an audience of one, and I have to be the final arbitrator. However, when I'm shooting, I shoot for the editing room.
Explain that.
If I get a perfect performance that I think is spectacular, I'll shoot another. I'll write that down in my notes. That's spectacular, but let's do one bigger. Let's do one smaller. Let's give one for the actors. Let's try something different. Especially in comedy, what may be too much in one scene is not enough in another, and you have to find a balance. And testing, being able to watch an audience, hear an audience, that tells you much more about how you're going to complete editing your film. Testing is what told me that I had to completely change the beginning of Grumpy Old Men. Testing is what told me I had to change the ending of Miss Congeniality. I will say that How to Lose a Guy, I'm afraid we didn't get much information from testing because we scored a 94. And the one thing we did learn is that men liked it almost as much as women. And that's how we marketed it. That certainly has been the easiest test of any movie I've ever done, was How to Lose a Guy.
So the validation is what you got, not unimportant.
I've had students who direct a thing, everyone hates it, and they go, you know, that's what I wanted. I wanted the audience to hate this. Well, good. You got what you asked for. So go with God. And but generally, the movies I make, I want to hit an audience. In fact, I want to hit a 4-quadrant audience. I want to hopefully speak to everyone. And I don't only want to make them laugh. I want to make them laugh. I want to make them cry. Hopefully, they realize something in themselves that they can relate to the characters in the movie. They take away something with the movie.
Wow. Donald, thank you so much for being here. You are such a dear friend. I'm blessed to have you, and we are grateful to you for all of the wonderful films you've made, for the contributions you've made to the film business. And it reminded me of just how much I miss you and how we need to see each other more. I'm going to reach out as soon as I get back from London.
Kevin, I feel the same way. You could have flown me over to London to do this in person, but you chose not to. What can I say? I look forward to seeing you when you get back to Los Angeles.
To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our interview today. I encourage you to watch many of the films discussed and check out Donald's next film, which is The Last Resort, a romantic comedy. For more filmmaking and audience testing stories, I invite you to check out my book, Audienceology, at Amazon or through my website at kevingoetz360.com. You can also follow me on my social media. Next time on Don't Kill the Messenger, I'll welcome producer Basil Iwanek. Until then, I'm Kevin Goetz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.